Have you ever gone through one of those defining moments where, on the surface, nothing major has officially shifted, but you can feel in your bones that the world has changed in a lasting way? It's not tied to any new law or press release. It's about a fundamental change in how regular people perceive things. Right now, we may be standing at precisely such a crossroads. The fracture that began in Minneapolis is extending across the nation, touching areas and communities that typically remain detached from large-scale demonstrations. For what feels like the first time in quite a while, everyday folks who don't usually track national controversies, those who've long aligned with conservative perspectives and trusted official accounts, are asking the exact same hard question. Why are federal law enforcement officers using lethal force against American citizens on our streets? Let's examine the details step by step with a clear eye. On January 24, 2026, officers from the Department of Homeland Security, specifically including U.S. Border Patrol and Customs and Border Protection personnel, conducted an immigration-related operation in Minneapolis. During that action, they fatally shot Alex Jeffrey Pretty, a 37-year-old intensive care nurse employed by the Veterans Affairs System and a lifelong U.S. citizen. He possessed a valid permit to carry a firearm in Minnesota and was on the scene to film and document the events as they unfolded. Multiple videos recorded by witnesses clearly show him holding only a cell phone in the moments leading up to the encounter. Agents then physically engaged him, forced him down, and discharged their weapons repeatedly. This was not a case of a routine stop that spiraled out of control. It did not involve executing an arrest warrant on a known dangerous individual. The incident took place in the context of a public protest, and federal personnel ended up killing a fellow American in broad daylight. Pause and reflect on the historical pattern. In our country's past, whenever federal agents have resorted to deadly force against citizens during open public events, has the standard first response from those in authority truly been complete candor, an immediate impartial inquiry, or deliberate caution? Here, the initial public stance went in a very different direction. Leaders swiftly characterized the victim as posing a danger, stood firmly behind the officer's actions, and advanced a particular version of events well before a full picture could emerge from evidence. That pattern is precisely what raises alarms about power that lacks effective oversight. When those alarms begin resonating far beyond the usual circles of demonstrators and critics, it marks a real pivot point in public sentiment. The most noteworthy element in all this is the emerging response from conservative quarters. These are people who have historically backed robust federal law enforcement, relied on right-leaning media, and championed the importance of order and security. Yet today, a number of them are expressing serious reservations about the very administration and policies they once championed enthusiastically. Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill are now advocating for more comprehensive reviews of the Minneapolis incident rather than offering unqualified endorsement. That development is significant. When the foundational supporters who previously accepted government explanations at face value start voicing open doubts, this goes beyond minor political adjustments. It reflects a deeper decline in institutional trust nationwide. Individuals are reviewing the unfiltered video recordings themselves, drawing their own independent conclusions, because raw footage doesn't edit itself, doesn't wait for scripted responses, and doesn't bend to narratives. It presents the plain reality of what occurred. This brings us to the present situation. A federal enforcement effort has resulted in the death of a U.S. citizen on American soil. Confidence in government institutions is weakening, not only among progressive groups, but increasingly within segments of the conservative base as well. Across the country, more people are taking a hard look at the consequences of authority that operates without strong mechanisms for accountability. To shed further light on this broader transformation, consider the perspective of Reverend Rob Schenck, an individual who devoted 35 years of his life to leadership within the religious right. He is now speaking candidly about his previous involvement and explaining why he views this particular moment as a deep moral reckoning for the entire nation. I'm actively trying to address and make amends for the serious mistakes I made in the past. Over the course of 35 years, I served as a committed advocate and organizer on the religious right, playing a direct role in building structures and promoting ideas that have contributed to the pain and hardship so many are experiencing today. In that process, I ultimately acted in direct opposition to the very values and teachings I believed I was upholding at the time. Our streets are now living with the fallout. At this stage in my life, my focus has shifted to the work of restoration and repair, even if it arrives later than ideal. I will use whatever years I have left to pursue that goal earnestly. Being here in person, standing in unity with those affected, forms part of the healing I need within my own conscience, but much more critically, it addresses the tangible suffering that resulted from the harm I helped perpetuate over decades. I must fully acknowledge my responsibility in this, and that acknowledgement is profoundly painful. Still, I have been struck by the extraordinary generosity and openness shown by the people in this movement. They have welcomed me far more warmly and inclusively than I ever witnessed among many of the so-called Christian leaders I once worked alongside. They have extended grace to me, inviting me to walk alongside them in ways I would never have reciprocated toward them 10, 20, or even 30 years ago. And this represents genuine redemption on the grand scale of our shared society and in the quiet, personal story of my own life.